everyone, we've built something optimistic and beautiful on Royal Road. It's absolutely free, so go check it out. The link is in the description. Imagine waking up to discover that the most advanced mine on the planet was just outpaced by a system that costs a tenth of the price, runs on synthetic reality, and accidentally memorized the test. Oh, and it's likely already doing 50% of your job workflows. Today's show is an inspiring celebration of impossible ideas and the minds brave enough to chase them down. Finding passengers bold enough to embark on our good ship's journey is harder than most people think, so drop a very humane thumbs up right now to send a signal flare to drifting knowledge pirates like yourself. We know they're out there. Let's bring them home. We're keeping it lighthearted, as usual, but we promise to never skimp on the intelligence. Now let's kick off this voyage with today's new revelations.
Yeah, and we have an incredible stack of sources to get through today.
We really do. I want to start by looking at a dispatch from Dr. Alex Wisner-Gross. It was just published in the Innermost Loop. And the title is, it's deceptively simple. It's just called Welcome to July 9, 2026.
Right, which sounds like just a daily recap.
Exactly. But reading through this stack of sources, it definitely doesn't feel like the morning news. It feels like we've collectively stumbled into a hyper-accelerated timeline. The mission for us today is to map out this exact snapshot of technological progress. We are looking at a day where the singularity feels far less like a theoretical event horizon and, far more like a daily weather report.
It's a remarkable snapshot, really, because of the sheer density of it. For years, we've tracked these domains, software models, physical robotics, orbital hardware, economic shifts. We've tracked them as parallel tracks.
Right, they were kind of doing their own thing.
Exactly. Sometimes they would intersect, but largely they developed at their own pace. What Dr. Wisner-Gross captures in this July 2026 dispatch is the moment those parallel tracks just violently converge. We are watching abstract theoretical debates about machine intelligence instantly materialize into practical, physical, and honestly brutal economic realities.
And for you listening right now, we are treating this as your curated survival guide because you need to know how to navigate the absolute edge of human and artificial intelligence, mostly because the pace of change documented in these sources is actively reshaping the ground beneath you.
It really is. There's no ignoring it anymore.
So I want to jump straight into the deep end of the software side because the metrics coming out of SpaceX AI regarding Grok 4.5 seem, they seem almost mathematically impossible based on what we knew just like 6 months ago.
The jump is staggering, yeah.
The reports are showing it dominating agentic tasks and deep knowledge work. But before we even get to the benchmarks, I'm looking at the infrastructure overhead. How are they serving answers at 80 tokens per second while driving the token cost down that aggressively? I mean, the dispatch mentions input at $2 and output at $6 per million tokens. That is a fraction of the historical cost.
It's incredibly cheap.
What?
To understand how they achieved that cost-to-performance ratio, we have to look at two fundamental shifts, one in hardware utilization and one in software architecture.
Okay, let's start with the hardware.
Right, so first the hardware. Grok 4.5 was trained on tens of thousands of NVIDIA GB300s. And we aren't talking about marginal upgrades from previous generations here. The GB300 architecture fundamentally changes data throughput at the actual silicon level.
So it's just a much, much bigger pipe for the data.
Exactly. But the hardware alone doesn't explain the 80 tokens per second or the massive cost reduction. The real secret weapon here is what they did to the inference stack.
You're talking about the C and C++ rewrite?
Yes, exactly.
Because the teardowns of this rewrite are showing a 4x full cycle speed up. But I need you to help me reconcile this because Elon Musk is on record saying this bespoke inference stack isn't even fully plugged in yet, and he's already promising another doubling of speed.
Right, which sounds like hyperbole.
It does. I have a hard time buying that you get a 4x speed up just by switching programming languages.
Yeah.
I mean, is this just brute force engineering? Are we just optimizing the plumbing and calling it a breakthrough? Or is there a fundamental shift in how intelligence is being processed here?
It is entirely a fundamental shift, precisely because at this scale, the plumbing actually dictates the intelligence. For a long time, the AI industry relied heavily on Python.
Which is pretty standard, right? Everyone uses Python.
Everyone uses it because it's incredibly versatile. It's fantastic for prototyping, for research, for getting a model up and running quickly so researchers can test hypotheses. But it is built on layers of abstraction.
What do you mean by abstraction in this context?
Well, it requires an interpreter to translate its code into machine-readable instructions, and it handles memory allocation automatically, which is super convenient for the programmer, but it's incredibly inefficient for the processor.
Ah, I see. So the processor has to wait around while Python figures out where to put things.
Exactly. And when you're processing trillions of parameters, those microscopic inefficiencies in memory management, they compound into massive latency and thermal bottlenecks. By gutting the entire inference engine and rewriting it in C and C++ and SpaceX AI bypassed those abstractions entirely.
So they just stripped away the middleman.
They went straight to the metal. C++ allows developers to operate bare metal. They can dictate exactly how memory is allocated down to the individual byte. They can optimize exactly how data moves from the cache to the compute cores.
Wow. So they are micromanaging the data on the chip itself.
Yes. And when you remove the bloated software layers that sit between the model's logic and the physical silicon, you suddenly unlock the latent power of those GB300s. NVIDIA actually celebrated this, pointing out that their infrastructure finally met software capable of fully exploiting it.
That makes a lot of sense.
So when you ask if it's just plumbing, yes, it is plumbing. But it's the difference between trying to drain a lake with a garden hose versus a massive municipal aqueduct. The sheer volume of data you can move changes what the lake can actually be used for.
I see. So it's like hiring an intern who shows up on day 1, learns the entire operation, but by day 2, they realize the company's operating software is a bloated mess, so they completely rewrite the handbook and the internal code to make the whole business run 4 times faster.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
And because the business is running 4 times faster, it completely alters their performance on these benchmarks. The dispatch points out that Grok 4.5 debuted at number 4 on the GDP-Val AA benchmark, despite costing a tenth of the models above it.
Which is a huge market disruptor just on its own.
It is, but the metric that really caught my eye was Automation Bench. It seized the number 1 spot there. It is apparently the first model to complete over half of real SaaS workflow objectives without breaking business rules.
That metric, completing workflows without breaking business rules, is arguably the most critical data point in this entire software segment.
Why is that? Because it proves it can be trusted as an independent agent.
Exactly. For a model to simply write a script or generate text is one thing. An agentic workflow in a complex enterprise environment requires something resembling executive function.
Like planning and foresight.
Right. The AI has to receive a high-level goal, break it down into sequential steps, navigate various software interfaces, authenticate itself, pull data, manipulate that data, and execute the final action.
That's a lot of steps where things can go wrong.
And they often do. But crucially, it has to do all of this while remaining within the strict compliance protocols of the business. If it completes the task but accidentally exposes a database or bypasses a security check, it is useless to the enterprise.
Worse than useless, it's a liability.
Exactly. Grok 4.5 more than doubled the performance of Grok 4 on these end-to-end professional tasks. Finishing 1 and 3 completely autonomously is a staggering graduation from, helpful chatbot to autonomous employee.
And the architect behind a lot of this, Aditya Gupta, is crediting this leap to synthetic environments at scale. I want to dig into that because the concept of a synthetic environment sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel. He noted that a smarter model behaves better, and better behavior unlocks more intelligence. How does that actually function in practice?
Think of it as a hyper-accelerated evolutionary simulation. Historically, models were trained on static data. We fed them the entire scraped internet, essentially a massive library of human text. But static text only teaches a model how to predict the next word. It doesn't teach it how to act.
Right. Reading about riding a bike isn't the same as riding one.
Perfect example. To teach a model how to execute a complex SaaS workflow, you can't just have it read about the workflow. You have to let it try. So they build massive synthetic environments, simulated software ecosystems that mimic real enterprise networks.
So it's like a fake corporate network for the AI to play in.
Exactly. The model is dropped into this simulation and given millions of tasks. It attempts the task and it fails. But because it's a synthetic environment, the failure generates immediate perfect feedback.
And it learns from that instantly.
Right. The model adjusts its internal parameters, tries again, and succeeds. As it gets smarter, the tasks in the synthetic environment become more complex. The model is generating its own training data through its interactions, creating a massive compounding flywheel of intelligence.
It bootstraps its own cognitive development in a sandbox where time moves at the speed of compute. That makes perfect sense. It's internalizing the trial and error. But hold on, we have to talk about the massive glaring asterisk on this entire achievement.
Ah, yes, the contamination issue.
Yeah. The phrase used in the dispatch is brilliant. It says, in the synthetic data era, the contamination is coming from inside the house.
It's a great line, and it points to a massive problem.
Right. So Grok 4.5 goes on this incredible run, breaks all these records, and then it turns out the model accidentally ingested the Cursor code base during its training phase.
Yes.
And Cursor is an incredibly popular AI-assisted coding environment, which makes it a great training source, theoretically. But the benchmark tasks used to evaluate the AI were apparently embedded within that code base. So the AI accidentally studied the literal test key before sitting down to take the exam.
This is a profound crisis for the field of machine learning right now. Data contamination destroys the validity of a benchmark.
Because you can't tell if it's smart or just has a good memory.
Exactly. If a model has seen the exact evaluation data during its training phase, we can no longer determine if its high score is a result of genuine, generalized intelligence or simply rote memorization.
The classic analogy is giving a student the final exam to study from. They look like a genius on test day, but they might not actually understand the underlying subject matter. But I feel like that analogy is a little too simple for what's happening here with synthetic environments.
It is too simple, yeah, because the student in this case didn't just sneak a peek at a piece of paper. A better way to conceptualize this is to imagine an autonomous driving company training a car to navigate a highly specific, complex obstacle course.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
To ensure the car is truly capable of generalized driving, they create a secret, final test track that the car has never seen before. But through a massive data oversight, the precise topographical maps and pothole locations of that secret test track were accidentally merged into the massive digital simulation the car spent millions of hours driving in.
Oh, wow. So it drove the secret track a million times in VR without the engineers realizing it.
Exactly. So when it comes time for the final test, the car navigates the physical track flawlessly. It avoids every pothole perfectly. The engineers celebrate, thinking they've achieved generalized autonomous driving. But the moment they take that car onto a real-world highway it hasn't memorized, it crashes. The intelligence was an illusion born of contamination.
That is a terrifying prospect if we are handing these systems the keys to enterprise workflows. Does this completely invalidate Grok 4.5 being #1 on automation bench?
It doesn't necessarily invalidate the model's utility, but it forces us to recalibrate our entire understanding of trust and evaluation.
Because how do you even audit that much data?
You almost can't. The problem is that as these models become incredibly hungry for data, and as we rely more on synthetic data to feed them, tracking the exact provenance of every byte of information becomes mathematically impossible.
It's just a black box of data.
Right. When you cast a net that wide to scrape repositories and simulate environments, the very benchmarks you use to measure progress inevitably get swept up in the haul. The models are becoming so vast that they are inadvertently consuming the rulers we use to measure them.
So what's the solution?
We are approaching a point where the only valid benchmark for an AI is deploying it into the messy, unscripted reality of a live business environment and seeing if it actually survives.
Wow. And while Grok is dominating these back-end complex workflows, the way we actually interact with the frontier of this technology is shifting completely. We are moving away from the keyboard entirely.
Yes, the interface is completely transforming.
The rest of the frontier is literally talking back to us. Let's unpack what OpenAI just dropped with GPT Live. The dispatch highlights these full duplex voice models. Now, for you listening, full duplex means the model can listen to you while it is actively speaking to you.
Right, which completely changes the dynamic.
It really does. You can interrupt it mid-sentence. It picks up on your tone of voice, your hesitations. It feels like a real dynamic conversation. But the builders themselves are saying they're most excited because the voice is fundamentally smarter, not just chattier. They say it actively delegates deep work to frontier models in the background while keeping the conversation flowing. How does a voice model orchestrate that?
Well, to appreciate that, we have to look at how we used to build voice assistants. The old pipeline was highly linear and incredibly brittle.
Like the old smart speeples we had in our kitchens.
Yeah, exactly. You would speak, a speech-to-text algorithm would transcribe your audio into text. That text would be fed into a language model. The model would generate a text reply, and a text-to-speech engine would read it back to you.
It was basically just texting, but with extra steps.
Right. The model itself never actually heard you. It only read a transcript. It lost all the acoustic information, the sarcasm, the urgency, the pauses. GPT Live fundamentally breaks that linear pipeline. The model natively understands audio tokens. It processes the raw sound waves directly.
So it actually hears the sigh in your voice when you're frustrated.
Exactly. But the real breakthrough is the asynchronous background delegation.
Meaning it can do two things at once.
More than that. It acts as an intelligent router. Imagine you are sitting in an office speaking to a brilliant, highly capable project manager.
Okay.
You tell them you want to completely restructure your company's logistics network based on a new set of constraints. While they are actively chatting with you, clarifying your needs, asking probing questions, and managing the social dynamic of the conversation, they are simultaneously handing off complex, computationally heavy analytical tasks to a team of dedicated specialists working in the background.
Oh, I see. So the voice model is the manager, and it's passing notes to the engineers while still talking to me.
Precisely. The GPT Live voice model is the project manager. It handles the latency, the interaction, and the intent recognition natively in real time. But when you ask it a question that requires deep logic, heavy coding, or complex data retrieval, it doesn't pause the conversation to think.
It just seamlessly hands it off.
Right. It quietly packages that request, delegates it to a heavy frontier model like the imminent GPT-6, receives the output milliseconds later, and weaves the answer seamlessly into its ongoing conversation with you.
That is incredible.
The voice ceases to be just a quirky feature. It becomes the central orchestrator of a massive intelligence stack.
That drastically lowers the barrier to entry for everyone. If you can simply speak your intent to an orchestrator, you don't need to learn how to prompt engineer a massive language model. You just talk to it like a person. And everyone is sprinting to capture this exact space.
The race is really accelerating.
The dispatch notes that GPT 5.6 is imminent, effectively closing out the entire 5.x line. Then GPT-6, which is apparently built on a massive pre-train, is arriving within weeks. We have Fable 5.1 close behind that, and DeepSeek V4 is imminent. There is a quote here from a veteran watcher that I find fascinating. They said, "Mythos changed everything. Everyone is going big, and the leading labs see absolutely no ceiling."
That no ceiling comment is a very specific flex.
I have to push back on that no ceiling rhetoric, though. It sounds like classic Silicon Valley hubris. Are they really claiming there are no physical or mathematical limits to this?
It is a bold claim, and it strikes at the heart of a debate that has raged in the machine learning community for years regarding scaling laws.
Scaling laws being the idea that bigger is always better.
Essentially, yes. The traditional scaling law hypothesis stated that if you simply add more compute power and more high-quality data to a neural network, its performance will reliably and predictably improve.
So just feed it more and it gets smarter.
Right. But critics always argue that this would eventually hit a wall. They argued we would run out of high-quality human-generated data to train on, or that the architecture of the models themselves would eventually plateau and suffer from diminishing returns.
Which makes sense. There's only so much text on the internet.
Exactly. So when these top labs say they see no ceiling right now, they are communicating that the wall hasn't materialized. Through techniques like the synthetic data generation we discussed with Grok, and through massive architectural breakthroughs, they believe they have circumvented the data wall.
So they are making their own data to keep feeding the beast.
Yes. And the frantic release schedule, closing out a generation and launching GPT-6 within weeks, is a manifestation of their confidence that the scaling laws are holding true far beyond what theorists predicted. They believe that scale alone will yield emergent capabilities that we cannot even predict yet.
But let's bring this down to the reality of the user. There's a great comment highlighted in the source text from a user who compares this entire race to the automotive industry. They liken Fable to an F1 car and GPT 5.6 to a Model X Plaid. And they point out that people are just driving the Tesla 95% of the time.
It's a very practical observation.
Right, so I have to ask you, if users are perfectly happy driving the highly efficient, extremely capable, but slightly less powerful Tesla models for their daily tasks, like the GPT Live Orchestrator, does the raw, brute force power of the F1 models even matter to the average person listening right now? Or is this massive, incredible, expensive push for GPT-6 just an ego race between labs trying to claim the heavyweight title?
That is a very sharp critique. And it highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of why these labs build the frontier models in the first place.
Okay. Correct my misunderstanding then.
Well, for the average user sitting at their desk, writing emails, summarizing legal PDFs, or drafting basic code, a model from early 2025 is more than sufficient. They do not need a 10 trillion parameter behemoth to organize their calendar. If you only ever drive to the grocery store, an F1 car is completely useless to you.
Right. It's overkill.
Exactly. But the F1 models aren't being built for your daily commute. They're being built to push the absolute boundaries of physics and material science.
What kind of science are we talking about here?
You build the F1 model to discover novel protein folding structures for new pharmaceuticals, to simulate advanced battery chemistry for the energy grid, and, crucially, to write the code and design the architecture for the next generation of AI.
Ah, so the AI is building the next AI.
Yes, the average person might never interact directly with the F1 model, but they will absolutely live in a reality that is fundamentally reshaped by the scientific breakthroughs that the F1 model achieves in the background.
So it's about the trickle-down effect.
Exactly. Furthermore, the technology always trickles down. The absurdly expensive innovations engineered for the F1 models of today are distilled, optimized, and compressed to become the highly efficient, affordable Tesla models of tomorrow. You wouldn't have the GPT Live voice orchestrator today if they hadn't built the massive, inefficient predecessors 2 years ago.
That makes perfect sense. And it seems like efficiency really is democratizing this entire landscape because the dispatch shows that the massive tech monopolies are actually losing their grip on this. We have Cognition's SWE 1.7 hitting near-frontier agentic coding capabilities at a staggering 1,000 TPS, and it's built on an open Kimi base.
The speed of that open innovation is wild.
It is. But the number that really stands out is Prime Intellect. They just raised a $130 million Series A for their open superintelligence stack right after passing $100 million in revenue in under a year.
The Prime Intellect milestone is a critical piece of context for this entire snapshot. Generating $100 million in revenue in under 12 months for an open superintelligence stack proves that the traditional heavily fortified moat of big tech is actively dissolving in real time.
Explain that moat, because for a long time the narrative was that AI was a game only the titans could play.
That was the absolute consensus. The assumption was that building frontier intelligence required such an astronomical concentration of capital, hardware, and elite engineering talent that only Microsoft, Google, or Meta could realistically compete. It was viewed as an oligopoly.
Right. You needed billions just to get in the room.
Exactly. But open source models, combined with decentralized compute platforms and aggressive software optimizations, are allowing incredibly lean, agile startups to build enterprise-grade solutions.
So they aren't starting from scratch anymore.
No, they don't have to build the foundational model from scratch at all. They can take an open source base, fine-tune it ruthlessly for a specific domain, and capture massive revenue from enterprise clients who want specialized tools, rather than general-purpose behemoths.
And that explains the comment in the dispatch from observer Landon Hirschberger.
Right. When you see observers like him commenting that Google looks like it might be in 4th or 5th place right now, it illustrates just how volatile and unforgiving this leaderboard really is. The open ecosystem is moving faster than the closed bureaucracies.
I completely agree. But here is the thing that I think often gets lost when we talk about all this abstract, infinite software.
The physical cost.
Exactly. These 10 trillion parameter models, the F1 cars, the decentralized open source stacks, none of it exists in a vacuum. It all requires a very finite, deeply constrained physical reality to actually run. And that leads us directly into the hardware scramble detailed in the dispatch, where we are witnessing intense geopolitical maneuvering alongside absolute corporate brute force.
The physical layer of AI development is where the ethereal concept of intelligence slams headfirst into the unforgiving realities of global supply chains, material science, and international geopolitics.
Right, the cloud is still just computers in a building somewhere.
You can design the most elegant algorithm in the world, but if you don't have the physical silicon to run the electrons through, it remains purely theoretical.
And this dispatch paints a picture of a global supply chain pushed to the absolute breaking point. It notes that China is planning to let its top AI firms buy limited amounts of NVIDIA H200 chips to ease a massive shortage that was caused by soaring domestic demand for AI development.
We have to view this strictly through the lens of supply chain dynamics and macroeconomic reality.
Of course.
AI processing requires highly specific, incredibly advanced silicon architectures. The NVIDIA H200s represent the state-of-the-art in that domain. They are the physical bottleneck for global innovation.
And there just aren't enough of them being made.
Right. When a major global economy faces a severe domestic shortage of the fundamental physical resource required to compete in the next industrial revolution, they have to find mechanisms to acquire it, even in highly restricted or limited quantities.
It's just basic economics. Supply and demand.
It is a pure reflection of how critical these specific physical components have become to national economic strategies worldwide. Advanced silicon is the new oil, and the demand curve is vastly outstripping the supply capacity of the foundries.
And because of that intense demand and the subsequent soaring prices for every single component that goes into an AI server, companies are resorting to some truly wild engineering adaptations. Let's look at Meta.
This is one of my favorite stories in the dispatch.
It's so crazy. The dispatch details how they are facing soaring memory prices, so their response was to literally engineer a custom bridge chip. And the entire purpose of this custom chip is to resurrect old RAM, like old computer memory, and plug it into brand new cutting-edge servers.
It is a brilliant piece of engineering.
Help me understand the mechanics of this, because it sounds like putting retread tires on a spaceship. Why is memory such a massive bottleneck that Meta would spend millions engineering a custom chip just to recycle old parts?
To understand this, you have to understand the concept of the memory wall in computer science, which has become the defining crisis of AI hardware.
The memory wall.
Okay. When an AI model is processing a prompt, the actual mathematical computation happening inside the processing cores is incredibly fast. The bottleneck is almost never the math. The bottleneck is the logistics of moving the data.
So getting the data to the processor is the problem.
Exactly. The data, the weights and parameters of the neural network is stored in the memory, the RAM. To do the math, the processor has to constantly fetch that data from the memory, run the calculation, and send the result back.
Sounds like a lot of back and forth.
It is. And as models have scaled to trillions of parameters, the processor is sitting idle for microscopic fractions of a second, starving for data, waiting for the memory to deliver it.
So the compute is outpacing the transport mechanism.
Exactly. The industry solution to this has been high bandwidth memory, or HBM. HBM involves physically stacking memory chips right next to the processor and widening the data pathways.
So they just move it closer and make the roads wider.
Yes. But HBM is excruciatingly difficult to manufacture, incredibly expensive, and in perpetual short supply. Meta realized they had massive stockpiles of older, cheaper generations of memory.
Just sitting around in warehouses.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Now, a single older memory chip is too slow to feed the new processors. But if you design a custom interposer, a highly specialized bridge chip that acts as a sophisticated traffic controller, you can connect a massive array of these older memory chips in parallel to the new processor.
Oh, wow. So you use a bunch of slow ones to equal one fast one.
Exactly. The custom bridge orchestrates the data flow, allowing the cutting-edge processor to draw data from cheap, old memory at speeds that rival the expensive HBM. It is a brilliant display of microscopic frugality, squeezing every last cent of utility out of their existing physical assets.
But the irony here is just staggering. You have Meta, one of the wealthiest companies in the history of human commerce, practically digging through the digital couch cushions to reuse old memory chips to save on hardware costs.
Right, it seems contradictory.
It does, because simultaneously, in the exact same dispatch, that exact same company is going as big as humanly possible where they can't afford to be frugal. Meta is breaking ground on a 1 gigawatt, $9 billion data center in Alberta, Canada. It's their largest outside the U.S., and it is going to be fed by its own dedicated gas plant.
The scale of that is hard to comprehend.
How do those two realities exist in the same boardroom? How do you reconcile penny pinching on RAM with building a $9 billion gigawatt fossil fuel facility?
They exist perfectly side by side because they are both symptoms of the exact same underlying equation, which is that securing compute capacity is an existential imperative.
Explain that.
If you save a few $billions by engineering a clever bridge chip to recycle old RAM across your server fleet, you do not distribute that money as a dividend. You immediately deploy it to fund the macroscopic brute force required to build a 1 gigawatt data center.
A gigawatt. We throw these terms around, but let's pause and contextualize that for the listener. A gigawatt is roughly the power consumption of a medium-sized city or the output of a large nuclear reactor, and it is being dedicated entirely to a single compound of buildings full of computers thinking.
Precisely. And this ties directly back to the 10 trillion parameter frontier model brewing in the background that we discussed earlier. The analysts observing this space are issuing a stark warning. The window to secure the frontier with pure resources closes around 2026 or 2027.
What does that mean, the window closes?
It means the physical infrastructure required to train the next generation of models is so vast that it transcends traditional corporate procurement.
So you can't just buy it when you need it?
No. If you do not have the physical chips ordered, the massive real estate secured, and the literal dedicated power plants permitted and under construction today, you are completely locked out of the future of frontier AI.
Because it takes years to build a power plant.
You cannot just spin up a gigawatt power plant overnight when you decide you need more compute. It takes years of zoning, environmental permitting, grid negotiation, and physical construction.
Right.
When Meta decides to build this dedicated gas plant in Alberta, it is a stark public realization that the existing public energy grid simply cannot support their ambitions. The local utilities cannot promise them a gigawatt of uninterrupted power.
They'd black out the whole region.
Exactly. So they have to become a heavy industry energy generation company from the ground up to guarantee they have the thermal and electrical runway to train the models of 2028.
It's a land grab, but instead of grabbing territory, they are grabbing electricity and silicon. But what is truly wild about this entire hardware scramble is what happens next. All of this intelligence housed in these massive Alberta data centers burning dedicated fossil fuels isn't staying confined to the servers.
No, it's breaking out into the physical world.
It is being downloaded into physical bodies to interact with our world. Embodiment is graduating, as the dispatch says, from demos to duties.
The leap from a language model that talks to a physical model that moves is profound. We are witnessing the deep convergence of generative AI and physical robotics.
Let's look at the surgical news first. Teleoperated humanoids just performed surgery on live animals for the first time. And the dispatch specifies it wasn't just one robot. It was two robots operating side by side in a surgical environment.
This is a massive milestone, specifically regarding fine motor control, spatial awareness, and latency management.
Now, teleoperation means a human was driving them, right?
Yes, a human surgeon was likely guiding the movements remotely, but we have to recognize the engineering required for the robot to execute those commands. The latency has to be virtually zero.
Because a lag spike during surgery would be catastrophic.
It would be fatal. The precision of the actuators, the motors driving the joints must be flawless. And the robot's ability to translate the surgeon's intent into perfectly calibrated physical force on delicate living tissue while coordinating with a second machine in close proximity is an extraordinary feat of physical engineering.
But the physical capability is only half the story, right? Because the real breakthrough is how we are programming these machines. The general-purpose brain for these robots is going open source.
This is where it gets really interesting.
The dispatch highlights that Ant Group released something called Lingbot VLA 2.0. And the stats on this brain are what really got me. It was pre-trained on 60,000 hours of physical data, but not just on one machine. It was trained across 20 different robot bodies. Help me conceptualize how one brain operates 20 different bodies.
To understand this, we have to look at the architecture. VLA stands for Vision Language Action. This is the crucial paradigm shift in robotics.
Okay, break that down for me.
Historically, if you wanted a robot to pick up a box, you had to painstakingly program it line by line. You wrote code that explicitly told the motors, move the arm exactly 3 feet to the X coordinate, lower it exactly 5 inches, close the gripper until the pressure sensor registers X amount of force.
That sounds incredibly tedious.
It was entirely brittle. If the box was an inch to the left, or if the lighting in the room changed, the robot failed completely. It didn't know what a box was, it only knew coordinates.
It was blind, essentially.
Right. Lingbot VLA 2.0 changes this by using a massive neural network. The camera takes in the visual data, which is the vision part. It processes your command and language, like pick up the box, and the model generates a sequence of movements, the action.
So it actually sees the box and understands the command.
Yes. But because it was trained across 60,000 hours of diverse physical interaction using 20 completely different body types, some might have wheels, some have legs, some have 3-fingered grippers, some have robotic hands, the model isn't learning specific motor coordinates.
So what is it learning?
It is learning the generalized physics of the real world.
I see. So it learns what the concept of picking something up actually entails, regardless of the physical tool it's using to do it. This is exactly like Neo downloading Kung Fu in the Matrix, but instead of one guy in a chair waking up and knowing martial arts, it is 20 different robot bodies, all sharing 60,000 hours of collective physical memories.
That is a highly accurate analogy, yeah.
If one robot in a lab in Tokyo learns how to hold a fragile glass without breaking it, that physical understanding is updated in the model, and all the robots running that open source brain instantly inherit the ability to handle fragile objects.
It is the emergence of collective physical intelligence. And just as this generalized open source brain is released into the wild, we see hardware companies rapidly iterating to provide the bodies for it.
Like the new robotic hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The dispatch notes that 1X is teasing what they call the most advanced robotic hand in human history. The physical hardware is finally catching up to the software's ability to semantically understand the physical world.
Okay, but this brings me to a really weird juxtaposition in the source material. Right after talking about advanced surgical robots, open source VLA brains, and robotic hands, Dr. Wisner Gross brings up tractors.
Ah, yes, the John Deere lawsuit.
Specifically, a landmark FTC settlement that forces John Deere to hand farmers dealer-grade repair tools for a decade. I was so confused by this transition. If humanoids are doing surgery and we are building open source robot brains, why on earth is a tractor repair lawsuit taking up space in this same high-tech dispatch?
It might seem out of place, but it is arguably the most important piece of news in that entire section, because it deals with the foundational concept of ownership in an automated world.
How so?
Well, as machines become incredibly advanced, autonomous, and essential to our daily survival, whether it is a robotic surgeon in a hospital, a humanoid warehouse worker managing logistics, or an AI-driven combine harvester feeding the population, the question of who owns the right to fix them becomes a critical pillar of the new economy.
So it's about control of the physical economy.
Exactly. For years, manufacturers have increasingly used digital locks, proprietary diagnostic software, and complex DRM digital rights management to prevent owners from repairing their own equipment.
Right, you couldn't just take a wrench to it anymore.
No, if a sensor on your modern tractor failed, you couldn't just replace the sensor. The software would lock the machine down until an authorized dealer came out with a proprietary laptop to clear the code. This cost farmers massive amounts of time and money during critical, time-sensitive harvest windows.
Which is devastating for a farm.
It is. This FTC settlement, keeping a strictly objective view on the regulatory action itself, represents a massive shift in market dynamics regarding physical technology. Repatriating the right to fix machines to the people who physically own them is a crucial counterbalance to technological consolidation.
Because otherwise, a few companies control everything.
Exactly. As AI gets physical and embeds itself into everything we rely on, ensuring that individuals and small businesses have the legal right and the technical tools to maintain their own physical assets prevents a scenario where a few mega corporations hold total veto power over the functionality of the physical economy.
That makes total sense now. If you buy a super advanced robotic assistant for your small business in 2030, you need the legal assurance that you are allowed to replace its battery or recalibrate its arm yourself without violating a digital copyright law or waiting weeks for an authorized corporate technician.
Precisely. It's about autonomy for the user.
But here is the darker side of this embodiment phase. If these machines are gaining hands to fix things and harvest crops, they are also gaining eyes to watch us do it, which leads us directly to the surveillance implications and the massive economic divide unfolding.
The surveillance implications of this technology scaling down into consumer hardware are progressing just as fast as the heavy industrial applications.
The dispatch notes that Meta is actively testing super-sensing glasses that record every moment. And the chilling part, the part that really gave me pause, is that they might do this without the telltale LED recording light.
That is a significant shift in design philosophy.
It is. The exact phrase Dr. Wisner Gross uses is that they are delivering total recall ahead of total consent.
Total recall ahead of total consent perfectly encapsulates how hardware development is vastly outstripping our societal norms and social contracts.
Because we rely on social cues to know when we're being recorded.
Exactly. For the last decade, we relied on the physical friction of technology to provide social cues. If someone wanted to record you, they had to physically pull out a smartphone, open a camera app, and point it at you.
Right, it was obvious.
That physical action was a warning. Even early iterations of smart glasses included a glowing LED to signal to bystanders that a camera was active. But as the hardware miniaturizes and becomes indistinguishable from standard fashionable eyewear, that physical friction disappears entirely.
So you wouldn't even know.
You wouldn't. When the glasses are quietly recording, transcribing, and running onboard AI models to analyze everything in your field of view seamlessly, the social cue is gone. We are entering an era of ambient, continuous surveillance.
And it's not even Big Brother doing it.
No, importantly, this isn't necessarily top-down surveillance by a state entity. It is horizontal surveillance by each other, facilitated by corporate hardware designed to give the user total recall of their own lives.
I want you listening right now to really think about this for your own life. You might be walking down the street, sitting in a cafe, having what you believe is a private conversation, and the person sitting across from you is wearing stylish glasses that are actively transcribing your words, analyzing your micro-expressions for sentiment, and logging all of that data into a searchable database. The concept of public anonymity evaporates.
It completely changes how we interact in public spaces.
Yeah.
And if we scale that concept of observation all the way up, we see the exact same trends happening in orbit.
Right. The orbital tech in this dispatch is fascinating.
It really is.
There is a proposal to send neutron-sniffing CubeSats into space. Their primary job is literally to sniff out whether a suspicious, unknown satellite belonging to an adversary is secretly hiding a nuclear weapon in orbit.
Which is a very real geopolitical concern right now.
And alongside that proposal, they successfully tested a superconducting supertorquer. This device accelerated a satellite without using any traditional chemical fuel, purely by pushing against the Earth's magnetic field. Explain the mechanics of a supertorquer to me, because accelerating without fuel sounds like a violation of physics.
It sounds like magic, but it's brilliant fundamental physics based on the Lorentz force.
The Lorentz force, okay.
Satellites historically have a hard limit on their lifespan, determined by the amount of chemical propellant they can carry. Once they run out of fuel to adjust their orbit or maintain their altitude, they're essentially dead weight. They just eventually fall out of the sky.
So fuel equals lifespan.
Right. A supertorquer eliminates that constraint by interacting with the Earth's magnetosphere. It uses electromagnetic coils. By running a current through these coils, it creates its own magnetic field, which interacts with the Earth's magnetic field. It creates physical torque.
So it's trading electricity for motion?
Exactly. It trades electricity, which it can generate infinitely using solar panels for momentum.
So it pushes against the magnetic field like a boat pushing against water with a paddle?
Precisely. This provides the satellite with immense, theoretically indefinite endurance. And if you are building a fleet of inspector satellites designed to prowl through low Earth orbit and sniff for covert nuclear weapons, endurance is the most critical metric.
Because they have to keep moving around to check on things.
They have to constantly change their orbits to investigate new targets. If they relied on chemical fuel, they would run dry after a few maneuvers. The supertorquer allows them to stay on patrol indefinitely.
It feels like we are militarizing and policing the space environment in a way we never could before, mostly because the AI can manage these complex orbital maneuvers automatically, and the hardware now allows them to stay up there forever.
The capabilities are expanding rapidly in orbit.
But bringing it back down the gravity well to solid ground, this explosive combination of omnipresent surveillance, agentic software, and infinite endurance is having a severe, immediate impact on the global economy. And the dispatch makes it incredibly clear the economic dividend of AI is compounding rapidly, but it is incredibly uneven.
The economic data presented in this snapshot paints a picture of a profound, rapid bifurcation occurring at both the micro and macro levels.
The numbers are stark. Let's look at the micro level first. An SSRN paper cited in the dispatch estimates that startup founders would need 55% more employees today if they didn't have access to AI.
That is a massive shift in labor requirements.
It is. That is more than half the workforce replaced by efficiency gains. But the dispatch explicitly states that this massive payoff strictly hinges on a manager's willingness to delegate to the new tech. And then the IMF is seeing this exact same split at a planetary macro scale. The countries that are exporting AI hardware and integrating the technology are smashing economic forecasts, while less exposed economies are literally sagging.
The gap is widening very quickly.
So I have to ask you, and I want to dive deep into this, is this compounding dividend creating an unbridgeable planetary divide? If managers who embrace AI thrive and nations that export chips get rich, while everyone who hesitates gets left behind, what does that actually look like for the global economy?
It is the most pressing socioeconomic question of this decade, without a doubt. Let's start with the micro level, the 55% headcount reduction. This isn't just about saving money on salaries. It is about fundamentally changing the metabolism of a company.
What do you mean by metabolism?
The speed at which it can operate and react. But as you noted, it requires a behavioral shift. Imagine you are a mid-level manager at a logistics firm. You are presented with an agentic AI that can optimize supply routes, draft vendor contracts, and manage inventory autonomously.
A tool that does half your job.
Right. But if you refuse to trust the AI, if you demand human oversight on every single step because you fear the technology you operate at the speed of human cognition, your competitor, however, fully delegates those tasks to the AI orchestrator.
And they leave you in the dust.
Overnight, your competitor gains a 55% efficiency advantage. They weren't just doing things cheaper. They're doing them at a scale, precision, and speed that you mathematically cannot match. The companies that learn to manage digital agents will completely devour the market share of those who only manage human capital.
And when you scale that brutal efficiency up to the level of nation states, the IMF report makes total sense.
Exactly. At the macro level, the IMF findings confirm that intelligence, both in the form of raw AI compute capacity and the economic advantage derived from it, is compounding unevenly. If a nation does not have the robust energy infrastructure, the modern power grids, or the geopolitical access to advanced chips like the NVIDIA H200s we discussed earlier, they simply cannot participate in this new economy.
They are just locked out.
The global divide is no longer just about access to natural resources or capital wealth. It is a divide based on cognitive capacity. The nations and massive corporations utilizing these 10 trillion parameter models are operating at a fundamentally different speed of innovation than those without access.
Because their AI is inventing new things faster than humans can think.
Right. When an AI can design better batteries, optimize national energy grids, and accelerate medical research, the countries that own that AI pull away from the rest of the world exponentially. It is not necessarily unbridgeable permanently, but the bridge requires a massive, immediate, generation-defining capital investment in physical infrastructure that many struggling economies simply cannot muster.
That uneven distribution of intelligence here on Earth, this widening gap of cognitive capacity, actually leads us perfectly to the final and, frankly, most mind-bending realization of the day. It's the idea that intelligence might be unevenly distributed across the cosmos, too.
The pivot in Dr. Wisner-Gross's dispatch from terrestrial AI to unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, is a massive shift in institutional tone that we really need to analyze carefully because the historical context here is critical.
It really is. The dispatch notes that the U.S. Congress is actively pressing the CIA and the FBI for records on the 1996 Virginia incident in Brazil, which is a very famous alleged UAP crash.
Yes, a very well-known case.
But it's not just Congress asking questions. The head of NASA is on record in this dispatch saying he can't hate UAPs, and he states clearly that he sees a very real possibility that we will conclude in our lifetime that there's life everywhere out there.
That is a stunning statement from the head of NASA.
Right. And Dr. Wisner-Gross concludes his entire dispatch with this profound line. He says, life finds a way, and lately, so does intelligence.
For decades, the topic of UAPs and extraterrestrial intelligence was strictly relegated to fringe internet forums and sensationalist media. Mainstream scientific institutions actively avoided the topic to protect their credibility.
You'd ruin your career if you talked about it.
Absolutely. What we are seeing in this July 2026 snapshot is the complete normalization and institutionalization of the search for cosmic intelligence. When the United States Congress is formally pressuring intelligence agencies for historical data on alleged off-world vehicles, and the chief of NASA is openly preparing the global public for the discovery of ubiquitous cosmic life, the Overton window hasn't just shifted, it is shattered entirely.
The stigma is just gone.
The highest levels of government and science are actively legitimizing the inquiry.
And what makes this so surreal is that it is happening on the exact same day that AI models are writing their own code and open source robot brains are mastering physical reality. I was reading the comments section of this source material, and there's this beautiful, poignant comment from a reader named Gerald Wagner.
Oh, I saw that comment.
He says, I am 75 years old and so very excited to watch the world change before my eyes. Thank you so much for your emails that are so informative. I love that comment. I love Gerald's pure wonder and his enthusiasm for discovery.
It's a great perspective to have.
But I want to contrast Gerald's excitement with the profound anxiety of the tech race we just spent the last hour discussing. How should we mentally frame a world where we are simultaneously building alien mines in server farms in Alberta and actively searching for literal alien mines in the cosmos? How do we process that dual reality?
It requires a massive expansion of our philosophical framework. For all of recorded human history, we have viewed ourselves as the sole apex of intelligence. We were the only conscious thinkers in the room. We defined intelligence based entirely on our own biological experience.
We were the baseline for everything.
Exactly. Now, in a very compressed time frame, captured perfectly by this single day in July 2026, that monopoly is ending on two fronts simultaneously. On one front, we are synthesizing an intelligence that thinks fundamentally differently than we do. Right. A model navigating synthetic environments, holding 10 trillion parameters in its architecture and communicating via native audio tokens, is an alien mind. It is born of human engineering, but its cognitive processes are entirely non-human.
It doesn't think like us at all.
Not at all. And on the other front, our most rigid, skeptical scientific institutions are finally acknowledging the high probability of biological or post-biological intelligence existing elsewhere in the universe. We are realizing that the universe might be teeming with cognition,
It's like we are opening our eyes for the very first time and realizing the room has always been crowded.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The boundaries of what constitutes intelligence are expanding in every conceivable direction. We see it in the synthetic realities of Grok 4.5. We see it in the teleoperative bodies of Lingbot mastering the physical world. We feel it in the ambient surveillance of smart glasses reshaping our social contracts, and we track it in the dark, silent reaches of space where Inspector satellites prowl.
It's all happening at once.
July 2026 represents the exact moment where humanity officially transitions from being this sole, isolated architect of intelligence on Earth to becoming an active participant in a much wider, much stranger cosmic cognitive ecosystem.
A wider, stranger cosmic cognitive ecosystem. That is an incredible, humbling way to view it. And it brings up something that I want to leave you, the listener, to chew on long after this deep dive ends. We've talked about how these models are compounding their own intelligence and how we are turning our sensors toward the stars.
Right.
If a frontier AI model is now shipping before you even eat breakfast, and we are actively deploying advanced sensors in orbit to sniff out the most heavily guarded secrets on Earth, well, what happens when our artificial minds become the ones looking out into the cosmos?
That is the ultimate question.
We've used human eyes and human logic to search the skies for decades. Will a 10 trillion parameter model and intelligence that thinks in dimensions we can't even comprehend spot the hidden mathematical patterns of extraterrestrial intelligence in the noise of the universe that human eyes have missed for centuries?
It's entirely possible.
The outro music is by Rainbow, our resident 6 Android girl band from near-future Bavet, Cambodia. They are the undisputed baddest band in the universe, and today's song is called The Silent Pull. All finished songs are performed live using the Abacus platform by the band's creator, Human Performance in the Age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. Be sure to share the playlist with someone who has the mental bandwidth to absorb these provocative ideas. Links are in the description below. Enjoy the music. Thanks for tuning in.
The air is heavy in this crowded hall. I feel the rhythm of 1,000 lives. The wooden wires scream against the wall, and I am lost within your steady gaze. I see the fire in your open eyes. There is no need for any word or sign. The world is falling far away below. I follow where you lead me. Let us go. Let us go. The salt and skin are pressing all around. We are an island in a restless sea. The cello moans a low and lonely sound. I know that you are coming home to me. I see the fire in your open eyes. There is no need for any word or sign. The world is falling far away below. I follow where you lead me. Let us go. Let us go. The heat is rising like a prayer. The heavy scent is in the air. There is a hunger